We are beginning a new Mishnah today. So this Mishnah is Mishnah 17. Put it on the screen for everybody. Mishnah begins, Shimon beno Omer, Shimon his son, whose son? So son of Rabban Gamliel from the previous Mishnah. So Shimon his son says, Kol yomai godalti min hachachamim, all of my days I was raised amongst the sages. V'lo matzasi laguf tov elo shatika. And I have not found anything as good for the body as shtika, as silence. That's as good as it gets. And then the rest of the Mishnah, which we will not get to today, below hamidrash hu'ikar, and that's not just the learning that's the main thing, but ela hamaisa, action. Chol hamar b'devorim, whoever talks too much, maybe chait will bring sin. A little bit tied to the beginning part. Okay, so first of all, just a couple of things about Shimon. So Shimon is known as Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, as he's actually in the next Mishnah, he gets his full title. It would seem at this point in time, when he said these things, he was not yet a rabbi. He had not yet been given smicha. So he's only referred to as Shimon. This Rabban Shimon Gamliel was one of the 10 martyrs that we talk about in on Yom Kippur we mention it, and in the service on Tisha B'Av we mentioned the 10 martyrs. So he was one of the great sages, and he obviously was raised in the house Rabban Gamliel, and he became also the Nasi. His grandfather had been a Nasi, and he was raised in a way where he was amongst the sages. So he picked up a lot from them. In fact, the Rabbeinu Yonah points out that, raised amongst the sages, I learned a lot of things. I picked up on their good character traits. Part of being amongst sages and great people is not just to hear the words that they teach you, but to watch them and to see how they conduct themselves and how do they interact with others. And through that, you learn all kinds of ways of how you should conduct yourself as well. So there's a thing of modeling, or we call it shimush as well, to be involved with other people who are great. You automatically will learn just from the experience, even if they're not going and specifically telling you different laws or other ways of conducting. Rashi points out from this, he says, even if you're smart, you may be very smart, but if you talk too much, then people will not think you're smart anymore. If a person has, some people, a lot of people are smart. They always have something to say about everything, then other people begin to think of them as something wrong. They're a bit of a fool. So he says, but Rashi also connects it to the idea of living amongst the sages, that he saw from that you don't have to talk all the time, even if you know things. And silence. I titled this speak to today's silence is golden, which of course is not exact wording of the Mishnah, but that's the concept. Is that when I was a kid, they used to say, "Keep quiet; they'll think you're smart." Right. So, and once you open your mouth, then they'll realize you're not so smart. The Rambam quotes in this regarding silence, regarding talking. He says there are 5 categories of speech that people use. So he breaks them down into 5 things. One is the mitzvah, that we speak for mitzvahs. When do we speak for mitzvahs? When we make a bracha, when we're learning Torah, we're reading the Torah, right? Those things we're talking about, and many of them are actual obligations, things that we need to do, that we are making a bracha. It's a command. It's a mitzvah. We have to do it. So that's one type of speech. On the flip side, there's forbidden speech, things that you're not allowed to say. You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to tell untruth. You're not allowed to give false testimony. You're not allowed to speak lashon hara. Those are things that are clearly forbidden. Those are another type of speech. And then there's a third category. He calls it meaningless or frivolous speech. Just talking about things it's like you have nothing else to say. There's nothing absolutely negative about it in and of itself, but it's meaningless. So We're going to talk about the color of what someone was wearing, or the colors, or things like that. It just, well, maybe talking about the weather, but with which maybe not exactly. I'm just kidding, but that sometimes we talk about things that we have nothing to say, so you find something to say which is irrelevant. So if it doesn't serve a purpose, then that's a third category. The fourth category, he says, is talk that discusses to improve yourself, to improve your character traits, to be inspired. Let's say we tell stories, we sing songs, we give words of inspiration to someone else to try to improve ourselves or to improve others. So, well, we talk about great people and we say, look what they did and how what they did is so good, etc. So we can learn from it. So that's the type of speech which is trying to show us what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And then the fifth category is business, right? Or things that you need to do. So, you need to discuss a business deal. So you're going to be discussing it, or something you want anything you need something, pass the salt, right? If you want the salt, you need to have someone pass it, right? So there's certain things you have to say, you have to use your speech in order to accomplish. There are just many things which are basics in life that you absolutely have to talk about in order to get anything done. So he said those are the five categories. So of those categories, he says obviously the things that are forbidden we should not be speaking about, and I don't need the Shimon ben Gamliel to tell me that either, because we know those are forbidden. That's not specifically what he's referring to say minimize it. Shouldn't be doing it at all. And even the frivolous, meaningless speech also, there's no need for it. Mitzvos, things that are good to the learning of Torah, the saying of brachos, the praising of others, to teach ourselves to be better, that the more the merrier. So what he's really referring to is that last category, things you need to do, but you do what you need to do. Don't do more than you need to do. You need to talk about business, you need to talk about household needs, you need to talk about your life. Obviously you do, but don't go on and on and on and on. There's a limit to how much you do, and that's, he says, the area where one should limit his speech. As Irving Bunin points out, for example, that's when things to do with physical things. So generally, the less you say, the better. Spiritual things, that's something. The more you say, the better. Another interesting angle that the Rav Bartanura points out is, when if someone gets insulted, someone else insults you. So we have a concept that says you shouldn't respond. Be silent. If someone insults you, just don't give it back. And so a person is able to hear themselves being insulted and be silent. So you're actually on a very high level. So we're talking about that idea. And there's another way of reading this Mishnah that makes a slightly difference. The way the version that we had on the text here was that Ella Shatika. There's another version that takes out the word Ella and puts in a mem and says there's nothing better mishtika, from shtika, than shtika. Here it's like it's only silence. That would be something more than. And so therefore the Tiferes Yisrael points out on this. He says that he hasn't seen anything good that comes from being quiet, not more than being quiet, but from being quiet in learning. If you want to learn something, you need to speak up. If you're just going to sit there and never say a word, then if you don't ask questions, right, if you don't try to understand it better, you're not going to be able to understand it better. And therefore, by asking questions and discussing and hearing the answers that the teacher gives, the Rebbe gives, then you'll understand it, you'll remember it better, and therefore speaking when it comes to learning things, that is a good thing. In general, you need to really go through a subject matter to be able to understand it fully. We're going to make one other points, that that a person has 2 ears and 2 eyes, but you only have 1 mouth, right? And your mouth is already got a business. We need your mouth to eat, you need your mouth to talk, but we see you only have 1 mouth. So less you were given less parts of your body to talk than for hearing and seeing, which means the person should be hearing more, seeing more, and talking less. And that's the message. So we'll hold it there. Have a great day, everyone.